All right, hello, my interactive design students at University of Colorado, Denver. This is a public video, so other folks will be able to view it as well. Like to caveat that this video was filmed for my students, so there may be comments that are specific to the assignments in my classes or my teaching philosophy that I kind of cover in other videos. So if you watch this, the way that you use it, it's on you. For my students, though, this will help set up the stage for success in the classes you'll have with me. One caveat, well, before I go there, my goal with this sprint and with this lecture is to help level kind of the playing field for all the digital design students in the program at CU Denver. I know that you've probably heard about AI in the news. You've probably used it for some of your classes, maybe, um, but not everyone understands it or understand like the technology and how it works and how it applies to design. So my goal was to get everyone kind of on the same level playing field. And this will be a video that's required for all of my students, so not just one, two, or three, but just like all of them in general. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first off, caveat, this is a huge simplification. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in AI, but I can give you my perspective based on the things that I've learned over my time as a designer in this field and like kind of seeing its really rapid evolution, not just in the way that I work, but also in the expectations of the industry. Huge simplification. Again, I'm not an expert. I can just tell you how I use it and my perspectives on it. Right. So in this lecture, we're going to cover a few things. So what is AI? It's basic. What can it do? We're going to also talk about how does specifically generative AI work, because that seems really to be like the primary thing that's affecting UX design right now. I'll talk about the use of Gen AI in UX design, and again, like some of the patterns that I'm seeing in the industry and how I will have some of my assignments set up for you to use Gen AI. We'll also talk about the good and the bad, and the ethics of using AI in our design work and the implications it can have on society, on expectations, the environment, things like that. And then how to get ahead of the curve with AI and just learning some of these technologies at a really rapid pace. So again, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a complete expert. I am learning a lot of this, I'm learning a lot of this as I'm going as well. So chances are this video is going to need to be updated every semester anyways. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so first section, what is AI? What can it do? So AI is a field of study that draws upon a couple of different disciplines, typically computer science, math, statistics, um, some form of like cognitive psychology too, I'd say, because a lot of the terminology that's used actually like comes from psychology. Now, my take on how it relates to UX, like the way that I define it based on my experience as a designer, is that it is an attempt at synthetically recreating the way that humans make decisions and mimicking intelligence. So it truly is artificial. It's not a person, doesn't think independently. It may like run like formulas and stuff and like self-improve, but it doesn't have like awareness the way that humans typically do. So in this video, we're going to talk about two kinds of AI. There's a lot to the field, but again, I'm just like really distilling this for UX design. We're going to talk about predictive AI for a bit, and then we're mostly going to focus on generative AI because again, that's where I see a lot of the impacts on our industry. So the differences between the two is that predictive AI, no surprise, makes predictions, puts together classifications. So the main question is like based on the data that's available, what are the future possibilities of what will happen next? So it's forecasting. It's forecasting a potential answer in the future, or it's creating, it's like analyzing trends. So, what does it take to make something predictive? There's the data, so there's like information that it needs to have. Uh, the AI will need to um, recognize patterns in that data. I say detection twice. I'm gonna erase one of those. But yeah, pattern recognition. So it needs to have the data. It needs to be able to see if there's a relationship um, in the way that the data is presented and the relationship between like the individual datum. Predictive AI will then try to predict a likely outcome. So it does that, of course, through the prediction, through forecasting, through statistical analysis. Then it also provides like next steps, so recommendations, and sometimes those are just like automated through math, essentially, or sometimes it's also like supervised and like reinterpreted by a human. That's usually better than just the straight math, in my opinion, unless it's like a data set that's only about math or only about numbers. All right, with generative AI, the difference between predictive and generative is that generative focuses on creating new content, and this is based on a data set and the way that it's been trained. So the primary question that I look to answer is like, based on the data that is available, what new thing can I create from it? So what can I generate from this data? So the things that are required is obviously the data. These like tools right now, they just kind of use like everything that's on the internet. And that's a huge data set. Some of it can be biased, not all of it's accurate, some of it's opinion, some of it's facts, some of it's quantitative, qualitative, like you name it. And it could be words, it could be images, audio, it could just be like straight up like spreadsheets with like numbers and text, etc. Generative AI then looks for pattern recognition. So again, I also say detection twice here. Oh, I'll make that change. In the same way as predictive AI, generative AI also recognizes patterns and relationships between the individual pieces of data, which is called datum. It also, just like predictive AI, like looks at likely outcomes. But the output is not necessarily a prediction. It's a prediction of what you should be shown next. And that's what you see as the output of Gen AI. So the way that these two are evaluated, meaning like how do you know it's something worth using or like how do you qualify them, is that with predictive AI, again, in making predictions and forecasts, you're looking at probability ratios. So like how likely is it to, how likely is a customer shopping for this one product likely to buy products of this other kind? So that would be probability. As a side note, like 100% accuracy is almost impossible because humans are very unpredictable, but also the sample size needs to be larger than the population on which you're going to apply, the math to. So someone who says like 100% or someone who uses absolutes likely very inaccurate or an inaccurate interpretation or application of it. Anyways, so another way that you evaluate predictive AI again is that the error rate. So kind of going back to what I'm saying about you needing to have more data to interpret to then apply to a smaller subset of like human behavior. With predictive AI to evaluate, you also need to understand those concepts. You need to understand just enough like stats and its applications of it. You have to understand how it's communicating and how you're communicating what the findings are and the limitations of its use as well. So a lot of the work that we'll do in class will be centered around what it's capable of, but then also in the work that you do with AI, where does it fall short? And what are some of the limitations of being able to apply this to your real work? All right. With generative AI, the way that it can be evaluated is against human feedback. So sometimes you ask, ChatGPT or Google Gemini, how many R's are there in strawberry or blueberry? And it doesn't get it right. So your feedback will be, it is not accurate. Other people will have like different feedback in terms of why it's not accurate, or the people who are building these models will explain like exactly like what the problem is and like why they can't parse out the number of R's in those words, but human feedback is kind of like an umbrella. The next one will be benchmarks against the mathematical models. So, you know, how accurate should it have been under, under what percentage, and how does the output relate, or like what's the comparison of the output to what we anticipated the accuracy level should have been. With generative AI, another way to evaluate is also the quality and the novelty or diversity of the output. So there's some commentary on whether or not Gen AI is helping us be better communicators, or if it's flattening discourse, if there's really any deep thinking or analysis, or if it just summarizes. We kind of see a little bit of everything, but that's also a lever by which we evaluate Gen AI and evaluate whether or not it's right for us in our project. So some examples, if I were to give a visual summary, also not my images. So predictive AI would be predicting, is that an orange cat or is that a bagel? So like you kind of got to look a little close to figure out which one's which. And then generative AI could be like an orange cat that looks like a croissant, for example. So one is predicting from a data set something. So in this case, predicting if it's a bagel or a cat. Generative AI is actually like taking that data set and creating something new with it. All right. So let's talk specifically about how Gen AI works. And again, I'm going to caveat, I am not an expert. So this is like a very high level summary of my understanding of it. All right. So as I mentioned in some of the previous slides, Gen AI takes a large set of data, could be like any kind of data. It interprets it using math. That's what they call the model. And that model makes a prediction of what it shows next. So when you see like Chat GPT, or you see the acronym GPT, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So generative means it's going to make a prediction of what you should be shown. Pre-trained is what this like mathematical equation that helps interpret the data, this raw data that it has access to. The transformer is like transforming that math and that data into something new. So Chat GPT, you can then extrapolate. It takes words, there's some math that's applied to it, and then those words make new words. So think I've covered this, but in a little bit more detail. So the way that these companies have been set up is that they acquire a data set. So I think at first they just took like everything that's on the internet, but you can imagine if this is specific to the government or specific to like a private company, they're going to have their own data sets. They're going to train that data, you know, being able to create these models. There could be some fine tuning of the data set, meaning there could be someone or another tool that helps organize content. So like you can pull in all of the websites on the internet, but if they're not organized in a certain way for the machine to read, they may draw like false conclusions or false correlations. So again, in some cases there'll be some fine tuning. From there, there's like a formula, otherwise known as an algorithm, that's applied to the data. The results come out, someone evaluates it. Sometimes it evaluates it against itself. That's usually called like unit testing. Like you're able to say like, this is what the baseline should have been. This is what the output, like some of the likely outputs should have been. How close were we to that? That could be an evaluation. The other one can be like a human evaluating, like, oh, like I asked for a cat that looked like a croissant and I got a cat that looks like a bagel. That would be kind of a qualitative evaluation. Um, from there, these companies or services then launch the tool for someone to use internal to the company or to the public. Then there's some monitoring that's done to then improve the model and to pull in new data over time. So we're going to start seeing that cycle with a lot of these major companies. Okay, so I want to give you a brief overview of how data is trained. And again, not an expert, just relaying the things that I've learned. So don't crucify me if I don't get this 100% right. But in the cases of chat, in the cases like text-based generative AI, there's this thing called tokenization. So every word or phrase is kind of assigned what's called a token, which is just like a numerical assignment. These are all made up. So like in every model, the word peaked isn't, assigned that. But this is just like a symbolic representation. So every name or every word, sometimes phrases, will just have like some token that's applied to it. From there, we can apply the idea of synonyms. So my previous statement, a cat peeked at the bird outside. We can take a look at the word cat and then apply some synonyms to it. So like, when I see cat based on this data set, the the synonym match for it could be like 3.65, 2.57 for kitty cat, 3.08 for pet cat, etc. So, the top row, those are all synonyms of cat. And each word is assigned a token. Again, these are all like fictitious numbers, but each of these words are assigned a token, are given some value so that they can be mapped in this like math equation. Same thing with other words. So, for instance, peaked can have different synonyms. And here we start seeing like, very colorful language. There is a lot of nuances that humans understand, um, who who know the differences between these words that a machine doesn't understand now, may understand in the future, but at least like at this current stage, doesn't exactly have like a 100% comprehension of how like humans can interpret these synonyms and how different humans may interpret them differently as well. So again, each word has some sort of like numerical representation of it. Now, these are the two sets of words that were synonyms, and you can see how like some of them will get matched to the other word based on probability. So, cat again has its own numerical assignment. Peaked has its own, and you can see where like cat might be better with glanced, kitty cat might be better with glanced, or pet cat is better with gazed. So we start seeing these relationships, and this is where like the generation of new content comes in based on like these synonyms. Now, if we just like scrapped the words and just looked at the numbers, again, these numbers are representations of words or phrases. And those relationships have like probabilities to them. And that's where we start getting, if we now change the tokens back for the words, we start seeing cat glanced, house cat peeked, pet cat looked, pet cat gazed. So these are all kind of like different ways to say almost the same thing. And now, if I were to string all these ideas together, here's all the different synonyms and like different ways you can say a cat peeked. And you'll notice that like I didn't even try to do like at the bird outside. I just focus on cat peeked. So cat glance, house cat peeked, house cat looked, kitty cat glance, etc. So this is where you start, in your generative AI tools, when you start asking for summaries, it's, I mean, guess is kind of maybe not the right word, but it is essentially trying to map relationships between these words and show you either a novel probability of words together or a likely probability of these words together. And right now, these are just words. So you can imagine with images and like the individual pixels and like the density of certain colors in these images, there are also similarly assigned tokens. And all of these tokens are like really specific to, these aren't standardized across companies either. So these are really like specific tokenization based on the company, and each company has their own math that interprets it. So that's why the results can be different. The output of Gen AI can be different based on just like the company's tools that you're using, and even why they're different across different companies' tools. So, Anthropic's Claude may have different outputs than OpenAI's ChatGPT, may have different outputs than Google Gemini. And it's because all of these tools have essentially different math equations. They have access or like interpret data differently, and they tokenize all of their data in different ways. So that's where we get a lot of the variation. So you can usually drop in one prompt to different tools, and you'll mostly get different results. All right. So in summary, with Gen AI, the output of that content is all based on statistical relationships. So it's computationally created. There is math that is used in generating this content. There is no understanding of nuance and how each sentence communicates something slightly different in the way that a speaker may understand them to be. So I want you to really let that sink in. The content that you see is synthetically generated. It may not be true. Like the content that you see may not actually be truth, based on facts. It could be because of a tainted data set. It could be that the data set it used was biased. Um, it could be the outputs could be based on other outputs from the AI model, which is like part of a lot of these terms and conditions when you sign up for an account, that what you put into it is also used to train it and to give other people data. So you can start seeing how misinformation or like inaccurate content can be quickly magnified. Um, so Gen AI, a lot of math, doesn't always make sense. And that is why. All right. That said, how do you make Gen AI work for a design process? So I'm going to explain a few ways that we'll do it in class, and the ways that I kind of do it on the job now. So one of the ways that you do it is called prompt engineering. That is just a fancy way of saying that you're going to speak computer to these tools, and you are going to use your words to write prompts into these tools to get what you need out of them. So, very similar to me being a teacher, right? I write these prompts, I write these assignments in the hopes that I get the right the right output from you, that I get the right assignment, the right kind of design, the right kind of thinking or fidelity. So prompt engineering, again, is just like a fancy way of saying you're speaking computer. So some of the examples of prompts, and you've probably already used tools, but I'm just going to review it. So like a generic prompt would be, create an image of an orange cat on an orange plate. You can create even more like hyper-specific prompts, like create an image of an orange cat on an orange plate in the style of a fourth grader learning how to paint with watercolors. And like you can even define the kind of outputs that you need. So there's a spectrum and like sophistication of the depth of the prompt that you write to really refine the output that you need. And sometimes you're going to need a couple of prompts, one after the other, almost a dialogue, to be able to get the output that you're looking for. But again, like it's just math. So you could compound and like you can compound your prompts and like compound something that you're not actually looking for, and like after an hour get something that like is completely useless to you. um, that's something that like I deal with at work, where I'm trying to use this tool to save me time. I use this tool, it ends up not saving me time, I've got to scrap it and just like do it from scratch anyways. So kind of luck of the draw, but there are ways to stack the odds in your favor to get the output that you need, and that's through writing really good prompts. There's fine tuning, and that's not necessarily something that you'll be able to like participate in every step of the way. Some of these things are behind the scenes at these companies that own these models and these data sets. So things like fine tuning it, so like making sure the math is even better. Fine tuning the data, meaning giving it the right data, or giving it more accurate or more modern data, or limiting the data that it uses to give the output. So instead of using all of the known like narratives of a topic, limiting it to like maybe the most recent stuff, or like a subset based on the theme that you're looking for. What you will have the most control over, though, is really fine tuning the prompt itself. So the things that you write to speak to this computer so that you get what you need out of it. All right. So a little more detailed about UX design, since that's what these classes are. So You got to balance the work that you do with these tools to get what you need. So there's a concept called diminishing marginal returns that I see on the job when using these tools. I'll use these tools to like summarize stuff. I'll get a summary, and like sometimes the more that I work with these tools, the worse the output will get. And just because I spend more time in these tools doesn't mean I can get anything better out of it. In some cases, I can, but not in all cases. So at some point, you have to realize the maximum benefit it can provide to you and then move on or start over. But just because you spend more time with the tool doesn't necessarily mean you get higher quality output. Sometimes you do, but not all the time. So keep that in mind. Just because you spend more time doing something doesn't mean you'll start doing it better with Gen AI. Right. So how do I use it? I've alluded to this in a few ways. So I use it to identify some obvious, things. So, if I'm starting a new project, I might use a tool to help me brainstorm ideas and just get the obvious out of the way so that I can start exploring like deeper ideas or more novel ideas. I use it for editing things that I write, so emails and reports. I sometimes use it for summaries. Um, but I'm a little old fashioned in that I still prefer to, interpret data, interpret words on my own. So the summarizations that I get, kind of use it as like a grain of salt, as just like another perspective of a summary. But then I usually just go in and like read the thing and come to my own conclusions. I use it to provide feedback to me. Right now, I really only use it for words and documents. I haven't, in this class, we'll like feed in designs and ask, AI to give us feedback on it. I haven't really used that at work, but it's another novel way you could use it. Um, Again, like there isn't it's all computational, right? Like there's no like fundamental human understanding. And that's like the secret sauce of design. So I don't expect to be able to always outsource that to AI. I think again, it can provide me with really simple basics like did I apply the design system correctly? Is what I'm, pitching compliant with the law, for example? Like it could maybe take a data set like some sort of like legal legal words and then look at my design and kind of like see if it's compliant. Won't be 100% accurate, but like that could be a way it provides feedback. Um, or, like I can put in my designs and then put in what my objectives were or what my design brief is and see, did I meet the basic objectives? Or for you, you can look at it as putting your project in or putting your designs in and seeing if it meets the rubric, knowing that some of it's objective and some of it's subjective evaluation. Um, you can also use AI, like Gen AI, to find patterns as well. Again, use these at your own risk. I don't always find them accurate. We've got user research software. Um, we've got video conferencing software that provides summarizations or evaluations on sentiment or action items. They're not always accurate. So again, like it's just one other interpretation. Don't forget to apply your secret sauce. I use it to also pull in visuals, styles, and design systems. So one of the tools that we're using for Interactive 3 is Cursor and like being able to build like these quick prototypes using this AI development tool. Uh, you can use it to pull in visuals from like another website or use like a design kit that's like publicly available already for you. So you can ask this tool to pull it in and to be able to like make stuff with it. And then I also use it for collaborating with coworkers. So we can use it for brainstorming, we can use it for feedback, use it for summarization, very similar to the way that I would use it individually. In the industry, we're still learning what collaboration looks like with these tools. Um, and there are so many tools out there. So, like, I foresee this part evolving a lot and kind of evolving the industry and the way that we work on projects. All right, so I think I talked about where it falls short. I kind of sprinkled that in with the last slide. But um, where I see Gen AI falling short for me personally is that sometimes I use it to identify the obvious, but the obvious then is inaccurate because it has a data set that's out of date. It's like not modernized to the content that's available right now. When I use it for writing or exploring initial possibilities, sometimes the ideas are just like really basic and generic and flat because, again, statistically, these are all like summaries and guesses. So they're not going to have like the dynamic nature of like explaining a concept or a new idea in a way that a human would who has a lot of enthusiasm about it. We have self awareness. The machine does not. Similar to the next point, like human nuance and interpretation, that's our secret sauce that's not replicated in these models, or at least not yet. And that's our secret sauce. And that's really where it falls short. It doesn't have that nuance in interpretation. Something that is also widely known is that, these Gen AI tools are more likely to patronize you than not. I think in some of the recent updates, this even like the last week, they've tried to like cut back on that a bit and say when it doesn't know or like doesn't have enough information to give you an accurate answer, but here's our best guess. These tools also use like these little disclaimers in the text box saying that, things aren't always accurate. You should double check. Um, but in a lot of cases, people believe the output of these Gen AI tools to be true because it sounds like the way that it's communicating back to you is in a way that wants to validate you, validate the ideas, and like it just sounds really patronizing. Um, in in the times that I'm trying to use Gen AI to look for patterns, again, the accuracy varies because it depends on the data that you're using. It depends on the way that the math was written. If the data is inaccurate, or if there's like prejudicial bias in the data and in the math, then like the pattern that it analyzes and gives to me is completely like useless. Like it is not helpful. It is just noise to me. When pulling in, content from other places and analyzing it doesn't always analyze my prompt correctly. Like sometimes it's not in the way that I prompt the AI tool to give me output. Sometimes it just doesn't understand as well, doesn't understand the human nuance of what I'm trying to get. So the output is then like not as accurate, or not as useful or applicable to me. And these AI tools are being built so fast and in isolation that like there isn't a lot of crossover between different tools right now. So you'll have these big companies like Google, right? Like they'll be able to have AI tools that work in the Google ecosystem, or like it might just work like a standalone tool for Gemini, but they're trying to get it to work within their ecosystem of products. But they may not be as refined yet as, to be as helpful as they could be. There's a lot of potential. Not all of it's like lived up to right now. Okay, so the good, the bad, the ugly in terms of ethics. Um, Gen AI is pretty controversial. There are people who have some pretty strong opinions about it already. I am here to kind of explain both sides, and ethics kind of come down to individual interpretation. So I will have my opinions, but I have attempted to show kind of like both the good and the bad based on these themes. So, with learning and education, especially applicable to being in my classes, um, some of the, there's good and there's bad. So, good in that it can help you learn new subjects. So, if I'm not explaining something well, or you come across a topic that you want to learn more about, that's not covered in like some of your, other classes or your other materials, you can use these tools to help you simplify them, to help you learn the subjects, to like repackage them in a way that works for you. Um, the more you use these tools, the more personalized they can get. So they can start personalizing its output in the way that helps you learn the best. It's also a great way to help you get started with some of these tools. So like you can use these Gen AI tools to help write like a tutorial series on how to learn how to code, or how to break down the design process and the different types of activities you may want to consider for each phase of the design process. So it's very good for that. But again, remember, it's all like based on like statistics, right, of the right relationships with the right words based on your prompt. So again, there may be like a margin of error for these things. The bad potential is that there could be rampant misinformation, meaning if this model is using a data set that is not accurate, it'll just keep spitting out things that are not accurate to you. So again, it kind of amplifies, it could amplify a problem in like misinformation. You may also erode skills. Now, this is debatable. Like, can you erode skills that you don't already have? Probably not. But if you're always relying on a machine to like help you learn, you may kind of lose some of those abilities to learn on your own, or to like find that information on your own, to synthesize data and come up with your own process. Like some of that gets lost when there's an over reliance on digital tools like Gen AI. There may also be confirmation bias. So again, remember, these tools want to appeal to you, want to make you happy, want to always put you as the hero in the story. So some of the things that it'll say, also because it could be like the wrong interpretation of the data, could amplify that interpretation, could amplify the wrong data set, could amplify prejudicial data or prejudicial like algorithms. And then obviously bad for learning and education is academic dishonesty. We've talked about that in some of our other videos. Don't be the first person to outsource yourself to AI. Do not worry. Someone will try to do that for you. Don't be the first person to do it in your studies. All right. When it comes to language, the good and the bad of Gen AI. So good in that it helps, it will help with rapidly processing a lot of information. So if you need a translation, if you have like a body of text that you need translated into a new language, and you also need it, the language simplified for a fourth grader, or you need to take technical jargon or a technical document and have it interpret to something that's like friendly for UX designers. Like it's really good at translating that, because again, it's all based on like the relationship of the words and the math in relation to the prompt. Again, really good at summarization, great translation, and it's good at preserving grammar, because again, it's like this. It's this self-reinforcing tool. So like once it has the model and has the data, like it keeps reinforcing it. So that's why it's good for preservation of grammar. But again, because everything's a summarization or a guess, it starts flattening language. And although again, like there aren't tools that can 100% detect if you used AI, like there's like plagiarism tools, like they're not going to be 100% accurate. Might actually, like, accuracy is debatable really for plagiarism. um, it amplifies a lot of misinformation, or amplifies inaccuracies. So just not great, not always great for language. um, and again, like some of the things that were applicable to like the last slide are also applicable here. So compounding of data, contamination, and erosion of skills. So in some cases it's great, in some cases it's bad. Does the good outweigh the bad? That's up to you to decide. All right. With interpersonal communication, very similar to language still, this is more about like you communicating with other humans. It's great for things like getting practice. So practicing presentations, practicing interviewing for jobs. You can use these tools to generate questions that you practice with. Google even has a really good tool where you can practice for job interviews at Google. And this tool can also help interpret your answers and give you feedback on it. That's super neat. That's something that you typically would have to pay for, or be in someone's good graces to get practice with. It could be great for coaching. Again, great for breaking down really complex topics into like simpler explanations. Great for translation. So again, that's like really similar to the stuff in the last few slides. The bad potential, similar again, flattens the point of view, reduces the nuance because it simply just doesn't understand it. It's Some folks may dump their therapists in favor of an AI tool. We're seeing a lot of news articles that suggest that's not a great idea. Um, we also don't get like healthcare, privacy privilege with these digital tools. So what you say to these tools leaves a paper trail. If you type it, it lives somewhere. So it's not HIPAA compliant. So I'll let you do with that information as you do. And also, of course, like these tools don't have authentic expression. They don't have human intelligence. They have artificial intelligence. So in a game of statistics and data, it doesn't have the awareness to be authentic with you. It's just going to keep summarizing and spitting out information, but make it sound like it knows what it's talking about. That's what it's designed to do. All right. So hot topic, Gen AI for work. What is it good for? What is it bad for? So again, great for rapid recall of info. So like I can dump in raw notes from an hour-long meeting, and it can help me interpret that information and summarize it. But again, I like to put my own human touch on it. It can help explain concepts for different kinds of learners or job roles. So, as a designer, this is the way that, I have explained my project and my outcomes and my output. I may need to reimagine it for someone in leadership who's not a designer, or I need to translate designer speak for my engineers to be able to build it, or to be better able to collaborate with project managers. So it's great at translation. So not just like English to German, but also like taking the same set of words and making it comprehensible for someone with a different perspective or like a different skill set. In some cases, it can help me eliminate tasks. It hasn't been 100% elimination. We're not there yet. But it has cut down time for me to be able to deliver some types of things. So like status updates, documents, a lot of writing stuff right now, it has been eliminated. In some cases, it reduces the time to deliver on some things, but then increases time in other places. So again, we haven't quite struck a balance, and certain tasks haven't completely gone away yet. Right. Because it has reduced some of my workload, it also frees me to think a little bit deeper about design problems. So when I'm not worried about, you know, the perfect words to put into my design, I can think more about how usable my design is and how people are navigating through it and the aesthetics perhaps of it, and less focus on the words. So like you can kind of like not outsource, but like use AI as an assistant to help you move through things that typically may slow you down. And because of that, it could accelerate creativity. Taking time out of your like creative space to talk to a computer can be its own, energy drain depending on your personality. But when done effectively, when the tools work in your favor, it just helps you move faster. So it's great in some regards. Now, what could be bad about work? There's a couple different things. These Gen AI tools work really fast, so your boss or your teacher might start ordering you around like a machine. Like the feedback may become more, like communication stuff may become like more blunt. The expectations of you to be able to turn around things faster, may feel unrealistic. But they're doing that in the way that they interpret these tools can help you, and how they believe these tools should be able to accelerate the rate at which you deliver stuff. It's up to you to set those expectations and to explain, when things take more time because of AI and when things take less time. And again, like these tools are still catching up with us, so I don't suspect that like certain things will completely go away. So goes to the unrealistic expectations part. At work, there's also like true expertise, someone who knows what they're doing with these tools, and someone who like can demonstrate proficiency with the tools, but also the discipline of design, and then expertise. Because again, like these are great summarization tools, so people can just like read up on something, read up on a script that is very overly confident, and then project that confidence, even if they don't know what they're saying. I think that's always been the case, but I think it's a little more rampant now with Gen AI, and especially with like deep fakes and this creation of like you can have video avatars that like present things on your behalf. Like it's going to become a little bit fuzzy when someone knows what they're doing and actually just like is talking the talk, they're not walking the walk. So in some cases it'll be more obvious, in some cases it'll be less obvious. Another downside to these tools are just like the hype in general. So again, they work well in some places, they don't work well in others. They may not solve all the problems that we think they will. They may not reduce the workload in like that meaningful of a way. So there's there's a lot of hype in this machine right now. It may die down. We don't really know. We don't really know. And sometimes like it is distracting to the real work itself. Sometimes there is pressure to use these tools just for the sake of using them, and like, but they feel counter to actually doing the real work. That's could be like a trend. That's just like a management style, or like that might just be organizationally the way things are done in certain places. I'm not saying that's how it's done where I specifically work, but sometimes it can be a distraction because again, like you're trying to speak to the machine to get the output that you need, when in reality you can probably just do it faster on your own with your generative intelligence. All right. So for society, what's the good and the bad potential? So great at cataloging all of our knowledge that is in a data set that can be consumed by these tools. It can help shorten the learning curve, can help make us more productive when done right, and can help make things accessible. So I've seen some videos where people who have you know, have side issues are able to use Gen AI to navigate the world almost in real time. So it's like, I'm walking through an airport, I can't see all the signs. You kind of have like Chat GPT or whatever other tool interpret the visuals that it sees within the camera to help navigate you through. It could be like your eyes, it could be your ears. Um, so I think those are some really like interesting novel ways that will like continue being explored by the industry. There are some very bad things as well. And again, like I think some of this will start to get repetitive. So propagating misinformation, we already talked about that, contributes to noise, very similar to the misinformation. Miscalculations can be weaponized. That's part of the required reading in my classes. The AI snake oil book, very, very, very good. There's a section that just talks about how um, some miscalculations are weaponized based to like policing and how you know social benefits are applied. The people who are applying these models or the outputs of this data set don't understand limitations and they make bad choices. They can be weaponized. Um, as we know, there's just going to be some job market disruptions. We're currently seeing it now because these tools are new. There may be a misunderstanding of how well these tools currently work, or maybe they're making decisions on a forecast of how these tools will work better in the future. And the uncanny valley, deepfakes are a real problem. Using these tools, um, the more that these tools get refined, the more that they may seem realistic. But again, it's all artificial. It's all a game of math. All right. Um, Environmental impacts of Gen AI. Good potential, bad potential. So could be good for things like climate predictions. So like big, changes in large data sets over time. It's great. Could be great at that. Could be good at energy efficiency in its calculations. So, if you have a smart thermostat, what should, what could your energy usage be based on the weather patterns in your area? One day it could probably start calculating how much your energy bill would cost, like, and like being able to help you budget for that, or look at the change in energy prices over time and how that could affect your usage or affect your costs. It could be great for modeling sustainability efforts or conservation efforts. So, monitoring water quality over time or water usage, monitoring air quality, the math can be applied in some really great ways for not just tracking, but for predictive interpretation. Now, on the flip side, everything that it can do, it can also damage. So energy consumption takes the internet runs on physical hardware. Like we say things are uploaded to the cloud, which is like invisible, right? Like where's the cloud? Like the cloud still lives on a machine somewhere. The machine is like plugged in to an energy grid. Um, in the um, in the fabrication and creation of these like computers and like tools for computers, there are emissions that are sent out into the sky in manufacturing. The electronics eventually erode over time. They get put in landfills when they're not recycled properly. There's some land poisoning. When you use things with high energy, you need a lot of water to cool it down. So you can start seeing like how this can be very bad for the environment if not controlled in the right ways. And maybe like we can marry some of the good potential with like improving and offsetting some of the bad potential. I will be very interested to see how this evolves over time. Right now, we're doing a lot of indexing on like great for productivity, great for work, good for like climate trends and stuff like that. I haven't seen it in the other direction where it's being used to correct some of these bad effects of AI. That would be some of the self-awareness that it doesn't have. That's up to us to make it aware and to help us solve those problems. Right. So we touched a little bit on the ethical concerns in like the good and bad. Um, some of these are going to get repetitive, but I'll go through them anyways. So again, tells you what you want to hear for the most part. It'll speak with unearned confidence because that's what it was trained to do. And again, the accuracy is really determined by um, by mechanisms that can be influenced. So the math can be influenced, the data can be influenced. Because of that, it um, can amplify things that are inaccurate or things that are biased. So some considerations for you as you're using, generative AI in your tools is, what kind of jobs are they creating? What kind of jobs is it displacing? And what is the invisible labor around Gen AI? So someone, the machine can't always be the one to organize and like refine and label this data. At some point, a human will have to do it, and because this is data that is being interpreted by math, like there is a multiplication, like an amplification of this labor that is not compensated. Because when you do something algorithmically, it means that like you kind of make it mathematically like sustainable at the outset, and then you get this like huge output from it that typically would have required more people. So that's kind of where like some jobs start getting cut. With content moderation, some of the things that are online are really terrible, and there are actually like when machines are not as accurate and they need to pull in humans, it subjects humans to that really terrible content. So what are the impacts of that? I will let you do your own research. I won't go into a lot of data or like a lot of details here because that's not in the spirit of just getting like the lay of the land for Gen AI. But the content that is moderated, the particularly bad content that is moderated by humans, there is an effect on humans that have to be exposed to that content. We talked about the multiplication of uncompensated error, but a data set that is used is like all the known data on like an art website or on like all of the academic journals. People are usually compensated for that, but when that data is used in a model to then create new content, people are not compensated for that. Now, could we go the way of like music publishing where there's royalties that are associated? Maybe, like that might be something that will be worked into compensation models of like pulling data to then like reinterpret, reimagine, and like create new data. Hopefully, somewhere in the near future, something to be governed, something to be encouraged. Maybe people will only use tools where the sources of that data, the people who are behind the sources of that data will have been compensated. Be a great, like, self-correcting society. So it's really up to you, though, to consider what is the ethical tipping point. At what point does the risks or like the bad really outweigh the good, and how well it can help you and improve your work life or improve the way that you operate in society. Okay, so I think this is probably like the fun part. This is kind of like the end of the lecture. I know it's been long so far, but how do I get ahead of the curve? How do you? How do I? get ahead of like this rapidly evolving technology. So I completely recommend you leveraging these tools for its strengths. So I told you, what it's good at. I've also told you what it's bad at. This book tells you a lot of that too. That's why I have you read it. Um, you will just have to accept that you will need to learn as you go. I am learning every day. My peers are learning every day. You are in the same boat. You're a student. So like your career right now is learning. So, you will just need to be comfortable with the idea that you will not always have all of the information you need to move forward. You just do the best that you can. The tech is going to keep changing faster than you can keep up. Again, that's like something that my peers deal with as well. We all do. We're all in the same boat together. New tools, new software, new ways of working. They're just going to keep happening. It's up to us to figure out our place in that system and to like keep up the best we can. However, um, the basics of design, the basics of our craft will be consistent. To use AI well, to be able to use these tools to help you design, you still have to know what good design is. I mean, you can't we're not able to put that human secret sauce into a machine. There are going to just be things that it doesn't do well. Because again, right now, the way that it's built is all based on statistics. There's more to design than just like relations and statistics, right? There's a lot of other decisions, a lot of invisible decisions that are made that can't be articulated or like output by a machine very well. Some of the ways that you can get ahead is also having an influence on this technology. And you may say, oh, I'm a student. How do I have influence on this? Well, you're going to be an AI native generation. You are using these tools. You are defining these tools. You're going to get hired in roles where you will have influence and sway over when these tools are used, how they're used in your job, where it brings value, where it doesn't. So, don't be afraid to like inherit some of the things that we see today. Like you will be able to influence that as you use it. Usage is currency. Like if people don't use it, these companies can't exist. There's no one using it. There's no one contributing data to it. There's no audience, so these companies don't exist. So again, usage is currency. You have influence, even in times you think you don't. It's up to you to help set the standards with your peers, with your creative director, with the companies that you're at, as your like cohort, your like academic cohort, your work cohort. When is it accurate to use? Like when is the output accurate and when is it usable? When is it appropriate to use it? And when should you not use these AI tools? And is it a shortcut that actually is to the detriment of the project or to the company? So those are all up to you. You have that influence. You're going to do great things. I have full faith. So some of the ways that I also try to keep up is that, I learn just enough to communicate my idea. So I'm a designer. My role is to communicate ideas in a way that someone else can do something with those ideas. I don't have to be a complete expert in Figma or in these tools to be able to do that. I need to know enough of it to be able to do my job as a designer. I just need to know just enough math and stats to understand the implications of the outputs of what it's telling me, also like of research data. I don't need to be a statistician. I don't need to have taken like 5 like different types of courses in statistics. I've taken one, and that's been pretty good to get me by. And I'm not like a full-time researcher, but I know enough about research to be able to know when something is accurate enough to apply to my projects. And similarly, I understand just enough about the business and the users and the customers to focus on the right problem. In some roles, you're going to need to know more about the business or more about the subject matter to create like an informed project. But in a lot of cases, you can learn just enough coding, just enough writing, just enough Figma, just enough math to be able to do really good work. In a book that I read over the summer, it says that I should be able to do something productive if I learn 30% if I just know 30% of this software, 30% of the subject matter, um, I should know enough to be able to be productive. That's a scary number. 30% seems really low, but I've been trying to roll with that with a lot of these new tools and the new subject. This new like job that I have. I don't have all of the knowledge, I think. I am trying to get comfortable with just enough. So even I am still getting comfortable with that. All right. So some parting thoughts. I've mentioned this previously. Don't be the one to outsource your job, your designs, your creative thinking, and your talent to generative AI. Someone is going to do that anyways. Some company, some job, some boss somewhere is going to try to do that. So don't be the first person to eliminate yourself out of the equation. You know, the value that you bring to design is that human secret sauce. It's all the context you have operating in the world. It's your ability to see patterns. It's your ability to generate something informed and novel, something that just works, something that a machine can't do. So don't be the first person to outsource your thinking completely or your output completely to a machine. In terms of class and the work that you do for me, or for the classes specifically, it is assumed that you'll be using AI as part of your design process. I just assume it. Um, do not represent the outputs as your own. So there will be cases in like Interactive 3 where you're using tools to define the project, and then you're putting those definitions into another tool to create something. You are the orchestrator. You will find a way to communicate that in the case study, or the way that you convey your presentation of that project. You will have disclaimers when you use AI to come up with these ideas. Again, the value that you bring as individuals to design is your human touch. There's a lot of AI slop. So slop is kind of like sloppy. It's the word that we use to just describe junk right now that we see. Um, your human secret sauce is what sets you apart. So like use AI to accelerate you in the ways that it can, but now that you understand its limitations, you'll know exactly when you need to put yourself into your work. All right. So I think I've kind of gone over that. So yeah, AI tools aren't a crutch. They can be an accelerator sometimes. This is kind of a summary view, but also, with this new job market that we're coming into, this wave of AI injection into the industry and into our craft, it's the people who understand the technology, what it can do well, what some of the limitations are, and how to best use it that are going to kind of weather the storm. There's a lot of predictions on like, where jobs will recover, what new jobs are created, what jobs are lost. You can put yourself in a position of success by understanding the tools, understanding limitations, the good and the bad, all the things I tried to cover in this lecture, and making an informed choice and putting your human secret sauce on it. All right, so that wraps up my AI literacy for UX designers. Um, Go ahead and go into the rest of Sprint 1 to complete some of the assignments. Some of these will be, output, like you're gonna deliver something. Some of it's going to be like discussion posts. But go ahead and jump into Module 1 or Sprint 1, and I look forward to some of your perspectives and what you share.